This mini lecture will describe some of the negative and positive effects of wildfires. We'll look at the amount of damage done by some recent fire seasons and also how much it costs to actually fight these fires. We will also examine what are some of the secondary effects, things that are not caused directly by the fire itself, but are consequences of the fact that it occurred. Wildfires can burn down buildings that are listed as historic. The photo on the right is from just pretty recently, actually, from Thursday, August 20th. It is the burned headquarters at Big Basin Redwoods State Park, a classic timber building built in 1936 that was on the National Register of Historic Places. You can see what that building used to look like in the image on the left. Loss of residences and homes and other buildings is an important consequence of many wildfires. So far this year, recent fires in California have led to the loss of over 1,000 homes and other buildings, as well as at least 7 deaths. The economic costs can be high. The 2018 wildfire season was estimated to have caused $2.6 billion worth of damages just to California alone. The fires in Australia last year have led to over $100 billion worth of damages. These costs do not take into consideration other factors, such as the cost of actually fighting the fires themselves. The costs of fighting fires can actually be quite extensive. These are data from the United States, provided by the Forest Service as well as other interior agencies that contribute to firefighting costs. There are 2 things you can take away from this graph. First, the annual cost of fighting wildfires is between $1 and $2 billion. Right now, more typically close to $1.5 billion a year. Secondly, the cost of wildfire suppression have been increasing over time. You can think a bit about why this might be the case. We'll revisit this issue in the last section of this module. These megafires have led to many other problems. Air quality can be degraded from fires, and this is one of the consequences of fires. Northern California had the worst air quality in the entire world last week with the smoke from the wildfires in this area, as shown in this photo of San Francisco. Air pollution is responsible for 2 million deaths a year. One of the major factors that affects human health is just breathing in tiny little particles, which are called particulate matter or abbreviated as PMs. These are classified by their size. Your hair is 30 times greater than a PM 2.5. So these particles get into your lungs and cause problems with your lung function. Wildfire smoke would be one way that PMs are produced, although they are also produced by other types of air pollution, such as factory and vehicle emissions. Tropospheric ozone is another type of pollution that can be caused by fires. The troposphere is near the surface of the Earth, not high up in the atmosphere. The troposphere, this is the air that we are breathing as we walk around. Note that this is different than the ozone layer, which is up very high in the stratosphere. This is the ozone associated with the ozone hole. These are 2 different things and are not related. Ozone can be created in the troposphere under specific conditions. There must be sunlight and certain gases present. These gases come from the combustion of organic matter, which includes trees burning in wildfires, as well as vehicles burning gas, which is really just an ancient plant that was turned into a liquid oil. Well, ozone is great in the upper atmosphere, in the stratosphere, where it blocks out UV rays. It's not a very good gas to be breathing as a person. It's very reactive and will break down lung tissue. This can cause problems with breathing as well as other types of health problems. We can actually look at the air quality in the US right now. You can select what you want to see. The monitor shows you the current results of all the air monitoring stations. So for now, I'll just select ozone and particulate matter. You can see that for most part of the country, there is pretty good air quality shown by all the green dots. If you're interested in the areas just where the air quality is poor, you can go to the contours region, which will smooth out across those dots the different air quality levels. If we look at ozone, you can see right now there's only a few spots where the ozone is high in the air quality indicator of moderate in California. I'm recording this lecture at 8 in the morning, so it's only 6 a.m. out in California. So there's not a lot of sunlight right now. It would be interesting to check back and see if these ozone areas get a little bit stronger by the end of the day as the sun rises. If we look at particulate matter in the 2.5 category, which is the category most damaging to your lungs and also very difficult for us to control right now and manage, you can see that there are large parts of the United States that have small particulate matter in the air quality, including parts of California, Wyoming, and Montana, where the air quality indicator is actually so high that it's up in the unhealthy category. Now, the air quality indicator is based on measurements that are at different stations directly on the ground. It doesn't tell us specifically about smoke or anything like that. But we're able to use remote sensing data to actually look at smoke plumes. And so here's another website. Both of these are publicly accessible. And you can look at these data yourself at any point that you want to. So this is a smoke forecast. It's based on measurements of smoke determined from remote sensing imagery. And near surface smoke right here, if we open that up and look at those data, this represents the air that you actually might be breathing. And you can see that near surface smoke, particularly in California, some places up here in Washington and Oregon, there's actually very high levels of smoke being detected near the ground surface. We'll look at vertically integrated smoke, all right? So obviously when a wildfire burns, the smoke is gonna go up into the atmosphere. It's not gonna stay just down at the surface of the earth. So vertically integrated smoke represents the overall amount of smoke in the sky. This is what might make a sky look kind of hazy. It also is what contributes to good sunsets. And if you look at where we are in Illinois right now, it looks like we are getting a big plume of smoke that's been coming over from California from those wildfires out there. And if you've noticed the last few days, our sunsets have actually had kind of a nice pink haze to them. And that's probably due to these fine smoke particles that are getting up into the atmosphere and causing that sunset. And it's not just about the direct costs of damage in fighting fires. Especially in the case of large fires, there can be secondary natural disasters. These disasters happen because the soil conditions have changed and the plants have burned away. The main issues here for wildfires are flash floods, erosion, and landslides. The types of landslides that most often occur are called mudslides or debris flows. Vegetation plays an important role in stabilizing the soils. After a burn, there are fewer plants on the surface that can act to trap and retain soil on the ground. The fire itself burns some of the organic matter in the soil that would normally act like a sponge to soak up water when it rains. And the surface of the soil can change to make it harder for water to soak in. This situation is sort of like going from a carpeted floor to a tiled floor. Which one is going to be all wet and slippery on top? Thus, after a fire, more water flows along the surface, carrying sticks and other debris left over from the fire, leading to flooding and mudslides. In December 2017, the Thomas Fire burned 440 square miles near Santa Barbara in Southern California, which was a record-breaking size at the time. It burned over 1,000 buildings and cost $2.2 billion in damages. This is a very hilly region with steep slopes. The steeper the slope, the greater the risk of a debris mudflow. You can see that Montecito is not in an area that had burned, which is outlined by this black line. But it is near some regions that were steep and with a high risk of mudflows because of the mountains behind the city. And in January 2018, about a month after that massive wildfire, there was a very large storm where 1 inch of rain fell in 15 minutes. This led to a massive debris flow. At least 20 people in Montecito were killed. Damages were estimated at around $200 million. The mud actually flowed all the way out of the mountains through the city, all the way down to the beachfront. But wildfire does have some benefits as well. It clears out low-lying brush. Many landscapes are well adapted to fires, and they need periodic fires to maintain the right combination of plants, which support other types of wildlife. By burning out the low-lying brush, more sunlight can reach the soil, which allows smaller wildflower plants to grow. These provide food for insects and birds. With fewer shrub and tree roots to suck up water, there's more water in the soil and in the streams. Burnt plant material itself provides a good source of fertilizer, as it is rich in the phosphorus and potassium that don't sort of evaporate up in the burning process. This fertilizer helps grasses and small plants grow and be rich in nutrients as well, which makes them in turn a really good food source for animals that might graze on them. Also, many non-native plants and insects are not well adapted. Also, many non-native plants and insects are not well adapted to wildfires, and their populations may be reduced either directly by the burn itself or because the other plants that they depend on to survive end up being burned. This typically would then give an advantage to the native populations. Some plants are so well adapted to the benefits of fire that their seeds will not actually germinate to grow into a plant until after a fire occurs. This includes many wildflowers and prairie plants, as well as large evergreens such as redwoods. The reason for this is that the seedlings that grow immediately after a fire have a big advantage in that there's more light and that the soil is nutrient rich. Seedlings that try to grow when there's not a lot of tree and shrub Seedlings that try to grow when there is a lot of tree and shrub cover may not have good enough conditions to survive. So while wildfires are a good thing for many landscapes, we know that things are currently changing a lot. Because our climate is changing and temperature and precipitation conditions are different now, many forests won't grow back to replicate exactly what they were before. Instead, they will be a different type of landscape or forest. And honestly, I don't think that we have a good sense right now of what exactly those new forests and landscapes will look like. Here is a brief summary of the things that were covered in this mini lecture. I discussed broadly the impacts of wildfires, including the loss of historic buildings, the loss of residences and other buildings, economic costs of wildfires, the secondary consequences, which can lead to further economic costs, as well as the good thing about wildfires, their benefits.